Hello there. It is December the 2nd, 2022. I have a question from Central California. This is about the Black Hebrews. What is your understanding, if any, about the Black Hebrews? Black Hebrew Israelites, also called Hebrew Israelites, Black Hebrews, Black Israelites, and African Hebrew Israelites are groups of African Americans and others who believe that they are the descendants of the ancient Israelites. All right. There has been many groups of people for a long time, for hundreds of years, as far as I know. There have been many groups of people in Africa and also in other countries, to include the United States, who have taken the position. They have the belief that they are the descendants of the true Israelites of God who were set free from slavery in Egypt by God. All right? There are groups of people who have this sincere belief. There are some issues with this, of course. Historically speaking, we don't have historical documentation to be able to support this. All right? I mean, it just doesn't exist. This is a belief system. It is not based on real, legitimate, recognized history that has been confirmed through archaeology and other things. I also find that those who believe in these kinds of movements, those who have these kinds of beliefs, they simply are not very well studied in the scriptures. They simply have not looked at the scriptures in detail. They have not studied the validity of the scriptures, the integrity of the scriptures. They've not studied the prophets, and they have not studied the prophecies related to the prophets and where the people were exiled to. I mean, they just simply are ignorant of the documentation that we have that shows that what they believe just doesn't have any historical validity at all. All right. So, why do these groups exist, and what is the significance of these groups? That's an important question that needs to be addressed. Is just, why do they exist, and what is the significance, and what is the importance, and what are the issues at hand? Now, it turns out that I have had a lot of exposure to people like this. I just have. It's been about a year now, I think. About a year ago, I encountered another person, and I didn't get into a discussion with this person. There wasn't any need to, and there wasn't really any invitation to have a discussion with them. But I would have loved to have had one. It's just that they just didn't seem to be that interested in talking with me about it, which is fine. But let me address this with four different areas to consider. Okay, I wrote down 4 different areas to consider. The first area to consider is that there are people who have decided to embrace the scriptures with great sincerity. Okay? There are people who have decided to embrace the scriptures with great sincerity, and these people were in Africa. There are still people in Africa who decide to embrace the scriptures with great sincerity. There are people all over the world, who would be considered to be descendants from people in Africa. And so they decide to embrace the scriptures with great sincerity. All right? And when they do, they can take the position that they are the legitimate people of God. And in a sense, that could be a valid conclusion, that they're the legitimate people of God because they embrace the scriptures sincerely. All right? And what can happen is, and from what I can tell, this appears to be how many of these groups evolved, what happened was that they eventually changed, or they morphed into assuming that they were the original Israelites. And this could happen the first generation. It would be similar to the formation of a cult, or it could happen after 2 or 3 or 4 generations, whereas eventually it was just kind of assumed by the elders, and then there were children who were born into this, and they just believe it just because that's what they've been taught their whole lives, that they are the descendants of the real Israelites who were described in the scriptures. So it can start out with a sense of sincerity to embrace the scriptures, and then it can morph, it can change into this belief that we are of these people, that it can just eventually happen this way. And it appears to me that there have been some groups over the last few centuries who just simply went in that direction. Okay, so that's one way that you can probably identify some people. Okay, there are other things that people have in mind. The other one is, of course, so that they can be blessed. That there will be a desire to assume the identity of the Israelites because you want the blessings that are offered through the law. All right, and lots of different groups do this. This would just be a different way that a group would do this. That they say, well, we are the true Israelites of God, we're the real people. And so if anybody's going to be blessed by God, it's only going to be us. If we obey the law, if we believe in this God. But like I said, there's usually some limitations concerning what they're going to believe and how committed that they will be to what scriptures, it's an issue of ignorance at that point, as far as how far they're going to go with that. All right, there's another appeal. This is another area that I've found with some people. Some people are drawn to this because they want to be a victim. All right? This is a big deal for a lot of people. A lot of people, they really want to be a victim. Now, what I mean by that is that they want to be identified as a victim. I don't mean that they want to be victimized, but that they want people to think of them as if they are a victim, even though they personally have not been victimized at all. All right? And where this fits in is it fits in with the exile. All right? It fits in with when God decided to kick the people out of the land. All right? So now these people were kicked out of the land, and they've been wandering around, supposedly in Africa, and they've been cast out from one area to another, and this has happened in many places in Africa at different times when the people who embraced Judaism were kicked out. They said, look, you need to go find somewhere else to live. We don't want you here. And so there is this belief that because they are being treated this way, that they are a victim, that this somehow supports the idea that they are the legitimate Israelites. And if you ask people, why is it so important that you are a victim? Well, in general, they won't tell you, but this is how it goes. They have this attitude towards you and a lot of other people around them that people owe them. They are owed. Well, owed what? From who? For what? They won't answer that. They won't answer that. They won't get down to the real details concerning that. They just have this attitude that they are owed. And they like having that attitude that they are owed because they're victims, or they're forefathers from 10 generations prior, maybe 500 or 1,000 years ago, or maybe not that long, they suffered. And so because they suffered from people who are long dead, and they're all long dead, now those of you who are still alive, whoever you are, even though you know nothing about what was going on, and you were not a part of it at all, well, you owe, And so there are people who like to embrace this in order to have the persona of being owed. They're victims because they were cast out of one country or another country, or because they endured suffering here or suffering there. Not them, but people who lived before them long ago, because of what happened to someone that they don't even know themselves. Other people who they don't even know owe them. All right? And this is just appealing for some people. They just like this. All right? Next is the religious pride. Okay? And religious pride shows up in lots of places, but this is just another one of them. Okay? You can now have this sense of pride because you have an identity that somebody else does not, or maybe you observe laws that other people do not. So this gives people an opportunity to have a sense of religious pride, which of course is only useful if they can compare themselves with you, or with other people who don't have the same identity that they think they have, or they don't do the same practices, or they don't observe the same laws. That is a source of religious pride. So this can be appealing as well, all right? So you have the sincere people who are attracted to these kinds of beliefs because they want to embrace the scriptures for themselves. You have the people who just want to be blessed. You have the people who just like the idea of maybe being a victim. And then you got the others who are interested in the religious pride. Or you have a combination of all of these factors in one person, which is usually the case. There's a combination of all of this that's found within the individual who wants to believe that they are a part of one of these Black Israelite kind of communities. Okay, that's what I have seen. All right, that's been my general experience. Now, what's important to remember is that the law has something to say about this. Okay, and unfortunately, the people who want to believe this kind of stuff, they don't know the law very well. Okay, just like regular Jews, today, who I would consider to be the legitimate Israelites, if you were to look at it from a historical point of view, they don't really know the law either. They don't care about the law. In fact, most of them don't even believe that there's a God, unless it's convenient. Unless they can use that as some kind of a weapon against you, then they'll say that there's a God. But there are some serious relationship problems that exist between people just because they pretend to be somebody that they're not. A regular Jewish person who can track their lineage back to the Israelites of old in some way. They don't know the law. They don't believe the law. They have their own imagination of their own delusion of what it means to be a Jew, that has no basis in reality at all. It's just whatever they want to invent so that they can compare themselves with you and say, you see, you're not a Jew. Well, what makes you say that? Because it's wishful thinking, why? So the regular Jews of today, for the most part, can easily be compared with the Black Israelites movement of having the same kind of problems, the same kind of issues of legitimacy and identity, and who are you, and what do you really believe? All right, similar problems, just on two different extremes, and these people tend to be opposed to one another. Why? Well, I want to be the victim. No, I want to be the victim. I want to be blessed. No, I want to be blessed. What are you getting at? Look, the law settles this. The law of Moses, all right, that was given through Moses, the law of God that was given through Moses, this settles the whole issue if people would just believe that there's really a God, and they would believe that he actually did give the law through Moses. If they would really believe that, well, they could look at the law. Let's have a look at some of the things in the law. I picked out just a couple of verses. There are lots of them. Go ahead and explore this. But I picked out two. I've got Numbers chapter 9, verse 14, in Numbers chapter 15, verses 14 through 16. Just because I decided to pick these, but there's many others. All right, let's start with Numbers chapter 9, verse 14. This is what God said, and Moses recorded this. What did he say? He said, "And if a stranger dwells among you and would keep the Lord's Passover, he must do so according to the rite of the Passover and according to its ceremony. You shall have one ordinance both for the stranger and the native of the land." Okay, now this is a way of saying, look, if a person is in Israel, if they're in the land, if they're part of the Israelite community, in that sense, just because they are present, if they decide that they will subject themselves to the Mosaic law, then they are considered to be an Israelite. All right? That's what God said. If you will subject yourself to the Mosaic law, then you will be recognized as a legitimate Israelite. Look, of the people who were taken out of Egypt, not all of them could trace their lineage back to Abraham. There were a lot of other people who went along. There were some other Egyptians, there were other people who went there already, who formed the nation of Israel altogether, and they were assimilated within the different tribes of Israel. This has been allowed ever since. Okay, so if a person will believe in the true God, if they will observe the Mosaic law to include Passover, then they are to be accepted as a legitimate Israelite. But the Jews today, they do not want to believe this because of all the consequences. Well, we can't share our victimhood. We can't share that. Well, that's just for us exclusive people. We're victims, from World War II, or from other times in history. We're victims. The world owes us. We don't want to share that with other people. That will dilute the debt. Okay, that'll dilute the payments. That's how a lot of these people think. I know, I've been around them. All right? They're like that. So no, they don't want to do that. They certainly don't accept me as being a legitimate Jew, although they don't really believe in the God who defined the Jew. I do, but they don't. They don't believe the law. They don't live by the law. I live by the law more than they do. So, but they want to say that I'm not a legitimate Jew, because I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So no, I'm no longer an Israelite. Yeah, right. There is no law that says that. I certainly do not believe in a different God than they don't even believe that there is a God. All right. So that's where these things go. Okay. So the law says explicitly that if a person will embrace the law, then they're considered to be a part of the nation. Numbers chapter 15, verses 14 through 16. "And if a stranger dwells with you, or whoever is among you throughout your generations, and would present an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord, just as you do, so shall he do. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly, and for the stranger who dwells with you, an ordinance forever throughout your generations, as you are. So shall the stranger be before the Lord. One law and one custom shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you." And of course, he's referring to the Mosaic law, not to all the customs and stuff that people have invented in modern times, pretending that that has something to do with the God who defined the Jew, when it doesn't, has nothing to do with that God at all. But look, the stranger, the alien, the one who is not officially recognized as an Israelite at birth or in their prior history, they are to be given access to the altar at the temple to present offerings. Are Are they going to do that in Israel? Are they going to do that when they set up the temple there and they set up the altar? Are they going to allow anybody from anywhere in the world to present offerings? I don't really know. I haven't asked that question to the people who I know who are a part of that. They may not really know themselves, but it's going to be an interesting question to answer, to see if they'll answer that. And I'll tell you what, if they do, all right, I would expect there to be a whole list of flights from the United States and from other places filled with Christians who are going to go on the tour and on the adventure just so they can go to the temple and present a sacrificial offering. All right, I mean, that is how disconnected Christians are from truth and from reality. And maybe the Jews over there will let them do it. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But who knows if they're going to obey the law of God? Who knows? All right, but here's the deal. All right, here's two examples, and there are many more. Here are two examples to show that if a person decides to subject themselves to the Mosaic law, then they are acknowledged to be a part of the Israelite community. All right, now if you would just consider this, all right, let's identify in our minds just for a moment some group, one of these groups. What are these called again? I have to scroll back up on my page. We have the Black Hebrews, the Black Hebrew Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites, the Black Israelites, and the African Hebrew Israelites. Right? Any of these groups, any of these people, whoever they are, go find them. You know, I know where a few are, and whoever they are, if they have decided that they are going to embrace the Mosaic law, then they are considered to be an Israelite just because of that. They don't need to have some history of victimhood. They don't need to have some history of many generations that their church has been able to continue. You know, they don't need to have some kind of map of some kind that they use, if they even have one. I've never seen one, but if they have one, that they use as a visual aid to show the migration when the Jews and the Israelites were exiled from Israel because they disobeyed God, and where did they go, you know, and how did they end up here or over there. They don't need that. Just embrace yourself today. Embrace the law for yourself today. And regardless of what group you're a part of, or what the color of your skin is, or what heritage or wherever, none of that matters. It doesn't matter. Just embrace the law for you. And you can be a legitimate Israelite according to the law. There you go. You know, and for the Jew today, you know, all the Jews today who pretend to believe in the God of Israel, but who don't, you know, they don't. They can decide as well. They can decide that from this day forward, they are going to embrace the law for themselves, and they can be considered to be a legitimate Israelite too. Okay? They can do that. All right? That's what the law says. Read it for yourself. Or if you even care to. You know, like I said, most people, they just want to have a belief system of their own personal fantasies instead of what God has genuinely said. So this is what it comes down to. All right, the whole topic comes down to this. What I have discovered is that there's a whole lot of discomfort that people have. You know, they have this discomfort. And this discomfort, it comes from one group of people saying that another group of people isn't legitimate and that they are. You know, you've got the Jews of today who say that they're legitimate and everybody else is not. And you got these Black Hebrew Israelites who say that they're legitimate and everybody else is not. You know, it comes down to this idea of this discomfort because people are wanting to say that they're legitimate and someone else is not legitimate. Okay? That's what it comes down to. But if you will just consider the law itself, that the law makes an allowance for everyone, and just embrace that, well, then the discomfort should just go away. There's no reason for the discomfort. There's no reason for the disagreements. We don't need to argue about the history. We don't need to argue about the people. We don't really need to argue about that if you want to have some kind of legitimate identity of some kind. The law makes an allowance for you to have an identity as an Israelite if you will just subject yourself to the Mosaic law. All right? And so this is a way that you can have peace between the Jews of today and the Black Israelites. They can join together. They can be together. They can worship together. They can do that if they will just believe the law. But they don't, and that's the problem. They don't believe the law, all right? They don't believe in the true God. And they don't want to, because there are all of these other things that are more important to them. They want to be the victims. They want to be the ones who are blessed. They want to be the ones who have the proper identity so that they can have the religious pride of comparing themselves with everybody else. They don't want there to be a unity of Israel according to the law that God defined. They don't really want that because they don't want to give up the other things that are more important to them. All right? So that's how, when I do have conversations with people like this, that's how I try to end the conversation, is to say, hey, listen, according to the law, if you will embrace the law, you're considered to be a legitimate Israelite. I can accept you. I can accept you for that. Can you accept me as being a legitimate Israelite because I embrace the law as well? Can you do that? And in general, the answer is no. No, they can't do that because there are all of these other things that are more important to them than the law of God. All right? So that's how I would address this particular topic, and I hope that this is helpful. If you have any questions for me, you can send them to me by email to aaron@aaronbudgeon.net. Thanks.